Avoiding plagiarism and taking notes. Dear students, as we have been discussing about taking notes and managing information while doing your researches, we are also required to particularly avoid plagiarism while taking notes. Okay, so in this session, we are going to talk about taking notes while avoiding plagiarism. You know that unintentional plagiarism is also an offense, like the plagiarism is an offense. Therefore, the unintentional plagiarism is also an academic offense, right? So we are required to avoid it. And how would we avoid it? There are particular tips, right? So don't use the language of your source, right? So remember that you are not using the exact language of your source from where you are reading and you are collecting the information, right? So if you think that there is something really important, then you must be quoting it directly, right? So unless you are quoting directly, you are not using the language of your source, okay? And then the next point is that you are not half copying, right? Because some scholars are in habit of copying half, right? Like they would copy paste and then they would replace some words with synonyms, right? So they would think that they are not actually copying. So that's not an academic activity. Remember that that's also plagiarism. You are not copying half, neither full nor half, okay? So don't half copy. Don't plug your synonyms. So you're not plugging in your synonyms, right? You're not replacing some words with your own synonyms, right? You will be writing down in your own language unless you are quoting directly. And of course, there are then particular ways you would quote directly, okay? So that's, an important point you should know. You should resist the temptation to relax, okay? And this temptation of copy-paste or while staying relaxed and you're not actually willing to work hard, that's the temptation because you want to relax. So you should avoid this temptation and you should resist this temptation because, the academic honesty is really important. And while you are going through a source, you're writing down it in your own language. And if you are quoting directly, then with appropriate quotation marks, and also by giving, the page number. And there is a limit on direct quotation. You should know this, right? So you are resisting to the temptation to relax, and you are willing to work hard. So that's, the basic principle you should always work on, right? You are preparing your own notes while using your own language. And that's an important part of your research study, right? So your own notes are really required. So how would you take notes? There are three, common ways. Number one is that you would prepare a summary. And remember that you are summarizing those points which were given by others. So while preparing the summary, your words are your own, right? So one is, preparing summary. The second is quoting directly. But remember that quoting directly is, done in a very appropriate manner, right? And in a very critical situation when there is no way out for using your own words, right? And there is a limit on quoting directly, as said earlier, that you, as per APA, you cannot really go beyond 40 words a page, right? And that's the limit. And then there is another problem with quoting directly because then your similarity index would be higher, right? So quoting directly is one way you would be taking notes, but do it while remaining very careful. Then paraphrase. Paraphrase is when you are paraphrasing the text of the original authors, right? But while paraphrasing, you are also referring to the work with an appropriate documentation style, right? So for all these, three ways of taking notes, you must be giving the page numbers, right? Because that is actually one important step for avoiding unintentional plagiarism. So I hope that when you are using these tips and these techniques, you would be avoiding plagiarism, and particularly you would be avoiding unintentional plagiarism.